a brand new day, and we'll be making history. Are you with me? Won't you stay?
Welcome to Elevating Lives. My name is Charles Evdos. I'm Executive Director of Rise Life Services. The goal of our show is to help and educate families that have special needs, developmentally disabled individuals, veterans, whatever, autistic, whatever the category is, we're here to help. In fact, we have created a hotline, or really helpline, at 1-855 Rise Life. You can call it anytime, and we will get back to you and try to assist you as best as we can. I'd like to welcome my guest Donna to our show today. She's a family member who has two children that have very special needs. And Donna, can you tell us about your children? You know, how did you discover they had autism? It was autism, correct?
Correct. Charlie, thank you for having me. So yes, my husband and I, when we had our first child, we noticed that she was missing some milestones. Not terribly, but here and there. She walked late, she talked late. We got involved in a preschool. We did early intervention services, and eventually, as she started to mature, her diagnosis was autism. Autism's a broad range diagnosis, so there's a lot that a child could show as far as symptomology. Right. While we were discovering what was happening with my daughter, I became pregnant with my son. When my son was born, his presentation of symptoms was very, very different. He has cerebral palsy, so he had issues with walking, he had issues with talking, but it was more in the physical realm of things as opposed to the behavioral functioning. So, when you have a child who has a disability, it can be very isolating. The doctors pretty much said, call early intervention, here you go. They hesitate to give any kind of diagnosis. There is no call OPWDD to get help or none of that. So families, especially back then, were really at a loss. My children are now 21 and 18. And thankfully, we've discovered all these great things that are out there, including Rise Life. And we're in a good place now, but it's very hard in the beginning. Very, very hard.
Believe me, I've been through it many a times. And many times I get calls from family members. Charlie, my son or daughter has cerebral palsy. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And there's really, no specific help to guide a parent or a family member through that crisis. Mm-hmm. And it's got to be traumatic and very discouraging, trying to find the help you need. Imagine, a lot of family members do not have an individual in their family that has a cerebral palsy or a disability. Mm-hmm. And until you've been in it, you don't realize the effort that's required, the time that's required. And it's really amazing, as I've seen over the years, how many families have been affected. Yeah. And it's mind-boggling as far as I'm concerned.
And it's a financial journey. It's a time-consuming journey. It's an emotional journey. There's a lot of things. As a parent with two children with disabilities, you come to some realizations that aren't always pleasant. The things that you're going to miss out on, but the things that they're going to miss out on. So, I think we need to do a better job in society at starting earlier to give parents the resources that they need. Just saying call early intervention, all that does is places them in the school system. Right. So now the schools are responsible. And, we need something outside of the schools. And it's starting to happen slowly in small places. It's not enough.
Right.
So.
I mean, when your daughter was discovered to have autism, mm-hmm. how did you realize there was an issue? What were the characteristics?
So I did the thing you're not supposed to do. And I took my daughter to a mommy and me class.
Okay.
When she was 2.5. And I looked around the room at 12 other 2.5-year-olds and I said, there's something happening here.
And you saw the difference.
Something is not right.
Really?
Now, I am the oldest child of 3 children. My husband is the oldest child. So we weren't around young kids. There was no guidelines. There was no comparison. So this mommy and me class was like my woke up moment, and right. I said, I need to have her tested. And that's exactly what happened. Her speech was late, but it wasn't It wasn't late to the point that they called her delayed yet at 2.5, because, all children develop differently. That's why they tell you not to compare them. But I did. I went to the pediatrician. She told me to call early intervention, and we began our journey then. And she's received services, whether it's in school or outside of school, since the age of 2.5.
Now, what did the doctor say originally when you took your daughter?
Speech delay.
Speech delay.
That was the
Nobody
original.
picked up on the autism.
Nobody diagnosed her with autism until we saw a neurologist at Stony Brook. And that's when they gave her. Because autism is not really, you can't treat it. It's not a disease. There's no drug you can take. So it's a spectrum of symptoms. So it took a neurologist to be able to say to us, these are autistic behaviors, and we're going to give her an autism diagnosis.
Tell me a little bit about the steps you took after you discovered she had autism. What did you have to do? I mean, to get services?
Well, I'm kind of unique because I was in the field before I was blessed with 2 disabled kids. So I worked for one of the local agencies, so I knew what OPWDD was at the time. It was OMRDD. So I knew the services existed. I knew they were out there, and I started at my local office. At the time, you went through the Suffolk County DSS services and Richard Rice's office, and you got your determination. There was no front door or any of that. And if you weren't aware that existed, there was nobody there to tell you that, and that's what frustrates me the most.
Right.
And long story short, I was able to go through the process starting there. We had a non-Medicaid service coordinator. We applied for Medicaid. I was well educated by the time I had to do it all for my son, because I had already been through the process. But it's not easy. It's still not easy. I mean, OPWDD created the front door, which streamlined the first part of the process, and that's fabulous. But parents are still hitting a wall.
Right.
So, that's where we need to
I know
support them.
the front door policy, unfortunately, it was well-intentioned.
Yes.
But they set it up with a priority 1, 2, and 3. And I understand that. But you know what? Parents who get older also need the help, too. Because when you're over 50 years old and you have a child that has cerebral palsy or that type of disability, try to pick them up and take them, you can put them in a Hoyer lift so often, putting them into bed. It's tough. It's not easy.
And that's all still very limiting. Environmental modifications for the home with someone with a disability that's physical are still difficult. There's still paperwork and hoops, and who do you start with, and where do you go to, and is it my care manager? Is it the agency? Is it OPWDD? Is it the Department of Health? Nobody can answer those questions.
I know.
So.
Tell me about how did you discover your son had CP?
So my son when he was born, it was obvious. He had spasticity across his entire body. He was born with his eyes crossed. His milestones were missed almost within the first 6 months, where there was no rolling over, there was no sitting up. So it was blatant, very obvious that there was something wrong. We went to the pediatrician, and the cerebral palsy diagnosis was, right then and there. He had to have several surgeries. He wears leg braces. We've been able to keep him on his feet, thank goodness. He just had major foot reconstruction surgery last December. And, the progress is being made. It's slow, but sure. But my son, the difference with him is that he can sit down, have a conversation with you. He's very well-versed. He can express himself. His limitations are more of the physical nature. So when my children presented both with disabilities, but what seemed so completely different, my husband and I sought the help of a geneticist. The geneticist said, from Stony Brook, he said, it's definitely genetic. It's whatever they have. I said, but they're so different. My daughter doesn't speak. She doesn't make eye contact. My son, he has physical issues. How can it be? And back in 2014, I want to say, it was 13 or 14, we had our genomes mapped. At the time, it wasn't a thing. Nobody was doing that.
Right.
Now everybody's
Well, the
doing that.
ancestry piece has become so popular.
Yeah, exactly. So we had them mapped, and we found out that my children each carry a gene deletion that neither my husband or I have in our blood. It was transmitted through something called germline mosaicism, and it was a 50-50 chance each time.
Wow.
So.
Now, I was under the impression cerebral palsy was caused by lack of oxygen at birth.
So yeah, that's the funny part.
Right.
So typical cerebral palsy has markers on the brain where you can do MRIs, and there's certain, spots that they're able to see. We went through all of that. The neurologist that we were using, the neurosurgeon, the orthopedist, none of them could really explain why this child had such spasticity in his body. Again, cerebral palsy, much like autism, is more of a description than it is a diagnosis. So the orthopedist, my orthopedist for him is wonderful. He's at HSS in Manhattan, and our neurosurgeon, who's over at Schneider's Children's, was Cohen's Children's, I'm not sure what they've named it these days. They work together, and we determined that orthopedic surgery at the time was not the way to go, so he had a pump implanted. He's got a baclofen pump intrathecally with a spinal cord catheter that releases some of that spasticity in his legs and allows him to walk better.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's been a journey.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Tell me what, both of your children in the RISE program, or just Chris?
My daughter she's 21.
Right.
She joined your RISE program in September 1st when she left high school. She actually she was eligible to complete another year of high school, but she was turning 21 in October, and we really felt that there was nothing more the school district could offer. And you've built such a nice community of all the RISE folks that a couple of her friends were going there. So it was a perfect, these could be the people she lives with when she gets older.
Right.
So it was a very seamless transition. So she's at the program. My son's only 18, so he's still in the high school.
Okay.
And getting services through the high school. And I always tell people, I said, because we live on the east end of Long Island, there's not a lot of programs to choose from. Pre-COVID, there was a few more, and I still would have chose Rise Life.
Well, that's great.
So just a little plug. You guys are doing an awesome job.
Thank you. I know Joanne works very hard
I know she
and
does.
very attentive to all our individuals that we serve. And, we are expanding our services on the day program because the need is tremendous. The Century Garden in Northville, we are adding I think it's a 2,500 square foot building,
Yep.
so that we can house an additional 35 to 40 people. And in fact, we're opening up a center in Huntington. We're doing a partnership with another agency to open up another 50 slots for the day program, because families need the help.
They do.
When they're at work, what is your child going to stay in front of the TV all day, or
If they can be left alone.
if they can be left alone too? And
Right.
and the beauty of the Huntington site, it's going to be a cultural center. So it's going to offer art, music, dance, even job programs for the individuals that can take that necessary step. So it's going to be the first really cultural center for developmentally disabled and special needs.
Fantastic.
I believe in the country, if I remember correctly. So we're hoping this model is going to work and we can expand it on in the future.
And then we'll start bothering you for housing.
That's going to be a problem, unfortunately. Housing.
No.
Unfortunately, with reinvestment dollars that was supposed, when they closed down Willowbrook and the Pilgrim State, they were supposed to take those savings from those closing those psychiatric centers down and throw it back into building housing for the individuals. Well, it happened for a number of years, and then they stopped.
The clock has gone the
And
other way.
it's terrible. One of the big problems we have is our direct care workers only get paid $15 to $16 an hour, because that's what the state, 80% of our salary is budget.
Yep.
And that's what the state reimburses us. And it's a shame, because these individuals, these direct care workers, they were essential employees. They work 24/7.
Some of
They
them,
worked through the
yeah.
pandemic, and they need to be paid $20 to $25 an hour, not 15, 16, even 17. And it's a shame in this industry. This direct care worker is not taken care of the way it should be. And we're trying very hard to get the Assembly, the state legislator, and Governor Hochul to release the funds that are necessary to help these individuals. If you look back, New York, the federal government gave New York State, I believe it was $1.5 billion
Yep.
to throw into the system. Not a penny has been released since April 1st. I know it takes time to distribute money, but we need to take care of the staff that are doing a great job, and it's a shame. It
And
really
hopefully Governor Hochul will start listening. I know there's money for the HCBS waiver, the Home and Community-Based Services waiver. Those funds need to be released too.
I know. It's just a shame that it's not happening. Tell me about something what RISE needs to do in addition to help your child and other children on
Commu-
Long Island.
Well, you know what we're always missing is community outreach in the schools. Educating the families that there's more to that yellow bus. There's stuff that can happen when your child is 12, 13, 14, community involvement.
Right.
There are services that are available to the families. Respite services. Respite is huge right now, Charlie. Our families have been cooped up from a year and a half. You've been cooped up. I've been cooped up. And, you know, when you have a child with a disability who's used to being out and about and among other children and staff and teachers, and they're stuck at home, it's 5 times harder. And it's harder on the kids, it's harder on the families. So I think right now the number one need is respite, whether that's 5 hours on a Saturday once a month, you know, or a babysitter at night. That's what our folks
And the
need.
sad part is respite funds have been
I know.
held
I
up.
know.
And it, you know, like, and you need to get that mental break.
Yeah.
Like you said, for 5 hours,
Uh-huh.
you need to go on vacation.
Yep.
You know, there's times when you can't take your child with you.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. It's
How about having a meal where you don't have to cut anybody else's meat?
I know, it's the Assembly, New York State, the governor. I think that what we need to do is have them work in a home or a couple residential homes
I agree.
and get the feel of what it's like.
Yeah.
Because until you actually do it, you don't realize how much work it is, the care, the attention, and especially if you have an individual who's a loper, you have to constantly watch them. You know, you don't want them running out the front door, going into traffic. It's tough, and I have to say my staff do a great job.
They do.
They're very attentive, and you know, I appreciate everything they do. And that, you know, I could be retired today, but my
I know.
passion. My passion is to help these individuals, and I'm going to do it as long as God lets me. And,
Thank you.
I intend to do that. But one thing I want to ask the community to do, we also have 2.5 food pantries, and I say half a food pantry. It's really a food truck that delivers food to the elderly and families that can't get to our food pantries. The pandemic has created such a crisis. It's up by about 300% in our area. And without donations, we can't do the distribution of the food. We work with Long Island Harvest, Long Island Cares. ShopRite is a big sponsor of our food pantry. And without the funds donated to our program, people are going to starve. And we need your help. Please go to riselifeservices.org. Donate whatever you can, whether it's $1, $20. Every $100 we raise basically feeds a family of 4 for a whole month. And, you know, it's so important. Thanksgiving's coming around. The holidays are coming around. So whatever you can do, please help us. The other big thing is, you know, bequest program. Many times people need they do their estate planning. They need their wills done and so forth. And if you don't do a will, you know, and the funny part is 70% of the attorneys out there don't have a will. And that drives me crazy. But it's so important to do it because when you probate it and what happens, you don't want New York State and the federal government taking 65% of that money and it's not going to your estate. In the meantime, if you do the proper estate planning, you can basically get pretty much 100% of the money and also help a charity at the same time. So it's so important that families realize, hey, look, you know, if you can afford to do an estate plan, please do it. But the most important thing is do a will.
And the supplemental needs trust.
Exactly right. And set up the special needs trust.
Yep.
It's so important because you want to make sure that when you pass on, that your child is taken care of for many years. And it's so important.
The benefit of the supplemental needs trust, too, is you don't have to have a lot of money in that account. But, you know, if you have a father-in-law, a mother-in-law, a grandparent who passes and wants to leave money to your child, if they give the money directly to the child, it could jeopardize some of their services.
Right.
So a supplemental needs trust is the best decision in those situations.
No, great. But again, if you need help, we're here to help you. The 1-855 RISE HELP, and there'll be a little 30-second commercial at the end about the services, the hotline and so forth. But if you need help, call us. If we can help you, we'll get you to the right place. And it's so important that we're there for you. We're there 24/7. My staff really care, and we're trying to do our best. And I thank you for watching the show. Donna, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
on.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having me.
Because it helps. Families need to know what happens with my child. What do I do? It's so frustrating, and I can picture somebody discovering that the child has a disability or whatever, and they panic, and
Yep.
that's the worst thing you can do. You got to go to the right place at the right time, and Rise is that place.
It
Trust
is.
me. And thank you for everybody watching the show, and hope to see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Rely on what